Navtej Purewal is a professor in Anticolonial and Decolonial politics and praxes at the University of the Arts, London. She's an AHRC India Fellow, coordinating a research programme on cultural heritage and the creative industries in India. So please welcome to the stage, Navtej.
Thank you. So I'm going to be thinking about and sharing with you some thoughts on connecting cities virtually. And I'm representing the India Fellowship, AHRC Fellowship, where we're working on a critical approach towards culture and the creative industries. So I'll start with this question. How does culture enable us to engage with and connect cities across contexts, differences, and similarities? As you can see from my loaded job title, which I recently began about a month ago, is Professor of Anticolonial and Decolonial Politics and Praxes. So to carry that with me into this talk and a lot of things I'm thinking about in this area of work, we're trying to understand and think critically about the ways in which the policy frameworks that we're dealing with in terms of the creative industries are actually proliferating, being disseminated, and being absorbed and co-opted, understood, responded, consumed by, and shared, and of course then reproduced across the communities and the cities that we're living in. And the ways in which we're doing this is by beginning with a question like this and thinking about a global approach to the creative industries and in terms of informing it through a critical approach to culture. So we'd like to think about understanding the history, first of all, of the CCIs, as I'll call them, as a policy framework. And that's a term that has emerged at a particular historical juncture, largely from the late 20th century, and its usage and wider adaptation has been heavily shaped by both domestic and international political agendas of largely global North nations. Its more recent arrival in India and other countries now, we'll say, of the global South, has raised questions around mapping. And of course, there's the Loughborough study produced by the team, Graham Hitchin's team. Our more, we might say, more historical and critical approach builds on the idea of mapping and connecting, but also we're thinking about how this concept has been taken up within a more regionally specific, connected across cities, political contexts, of course, economic and cultural agendas and dynamics. So we're interested in asking not what are the CCIs in India, but what work is this category of the cultural and creative industries actually doing? What's it doing both in India? Who and what is being enabled by it? Who might be losing out and left out? So this is an approach which we think about in terms of a historical approach, a contemporary approach, engaging with the policy context. So the UK government's 2021 policy paper, 2030 roadmap for India-UK future relations talks about, in particular, the diaspora as a so-called living bridge between the two nations, and thinking about the India-UK terrain as an emerging one from two different, but of course very, we might say, entwined histories. So we're thinking across this in terms of diasporas, in terms of the technologies, in terms of CCI's policy. How do we understand culture across cities, across spaces, across policy contexts, economic agendas, and new innovations that we see that we've been talking about over these 3 days here at the Beyond Conference? So I'm going to now take you into this journey of a particular project which goes beyond my role in terms of the India AHRC Fellowship role, which is about a virtual reality experience, working with a VR film company, but actually we'll call them creatives, because in the process of this project, the Project Dastan, it's a company registered in the UK, having been founded by partners who have grown up or have very strong connections to both India and Pakistan, and as well as having very strong links and locatedness in the UK as well. Project Dastan's Child of Empire immersive VR experience was premiered in the summer of 2022 at the 75th anniversary of the partition of British India. And we were part of the research team that followed the VR experience that toured the UK, India, and also Pakistan, which we added in as part of our Border Crossings project, which was also funded by the AHRC. This was accompanied by animated shorts focusing on more marginalized communities and experiences of the partition. The projects were developed and created by designers and creatives based in India, Pakistan, and the UK. And the focus on the partition experiences at this milestone anniversary of the 75th anniversary framed the overall project. And this is what we're interested in looking at in terms of our historical and critical approach. And as we followed the tour, we could see the ways in which in different sites, in different cultural institutions across different urban contexts, in terms of different national contexts, the ways in which cities can be mapped but also connected creatively. So we launched this in the project at the Victoria and Albert Museum on a Friday late during that summer of 2022 as part of a kind of South Asian takeover of this highly imperial gallery. We might say also that this happened at the heart of communities who were also coming into these cultural institutions. So the tour started at the V&A, went to the BFI South Bank, and then proceeded to go to Derby, Bradford, other locations, and was at SOAS for several months. And we saw where communities came into cultural institutions to be a part of the experience of VR, of the VR experience, and exploring these very complicated histories. So our research has been really engaging with what are the kinds of questions that these new technologies are asking across these kind of seemingly old histories of communities who are connected across these cities. So we also explored this going across to South Asia as well in terms of the Citizens Archive of Pakistan in Lahore, also in two universities, one in Lahore, across the border in Amritsar, to two sites there. And then finally, it basically is based now in the Partition Museum sites in Amritsar and Delhi. So this is the journey of a particular creative production. And as researchers, and in this partnership between the creatives who made this experience and the researchers who are engaging in these kinds of questions, there's a number of different ways in which we begin to think about the interconnectedness, the ways in which we can virtually connect cities on not just this tour, but looking at the 2030 roadmap, the ways in which the so-called living bridge begins to take on new meanings in asking new kinds of questions, embarking on new kinds of conversations. And these are not necessarily always easy ones. So this tour to different parts of South Asia, different urban sites, began to make us question the ways in which even diversity as a concept is utilized in projects. How more diverse do we need to be in terms of the questioning of VR as an experience? Is there an ethics around the use of virtual reality and other immersive technologies when exploring such traumatic histories? And also in terms of questioning kind of national historical moments and the ways in which they're commemorated. If we look back at the summer of 2022, we understand that is the 75th anniversary of the partition, might say independence, or the end of the former British Empire in terms of its connection, direct colonization in South Asia. But we can also see the ongoing legacies and lived experiences across those urban contexts that I showed you on that kind of crude mapping. So this is the ways in which we can open up, kind of creatively think about opening up conversations, but making sure that we retain a critical lens to how we are embarking on these conversations, doing them, moving ahead in terms of thinking about new technologies, the creative industries, but continually being mindful about treading carefully, ethically, and responsibly, and not forgetting the importance of embedding those kinds of principles within the ways in which we embark on those conversations, whether they be across from Lahore to Delhi, or from Derby to London, or across from continent to continent. The use of the creative industries And the understandings of cultural heritage and what goes with that is something that I think that the conversations that we've begun will be ongoing ones, and hopefully that you will be also embarking on those too. Thank you.